Hello my friends, how are you all doing? So happy to be back with a second video, and yes, I'm still getting over that cold a little bit, so I may still croak and cough and hack a little bit during this video, but I hope you won't mind. I just want to get another video done for you, because I bought another little piece recently that wasn't too expensive at all, and it's probably not the greatest thing in the world of collecting the Beatles, but for me personally, this has always been like a little artifact that I've always been intrigued by and wanted, and I'll tell you the whole story. Now, I've always been very fascinated with the early period of the Beatles, before their fame and fortune. I've always been into that period from when they first met at the village fete there at the church, the garden fete, or whatever you called it. Yeah, excuse my New England accent, folks, okay? I don't always get a lot of these words correct. But anyway, from that period when John met Paul, and until Paul introduced George to John, right up to the period when they switched from the leather gear to the suits with Pete in mid-62 or so, and then Ringo came shortly thereafter. But that period before Love Me Do was released, that early period, the raw period, the club period, when they were really slogging it out in Germany and Liverpool and all the different places. I just love that period of the Beatles. And before we go any further on my story, I just want to recommend this book to you that I got a long time ago. If you want to get a really cool book about the early period of the Beatles, this happens to be my favorite. I know there's a ton out there, and I have many of them, but this one, called How They Became the Beatles, by Gareth Pawlowski. Gareth Pawlowski. Beautiful cover there. Folks, this, for me, is my favorite. My favorite of that early period of the Beatles. I won't spend too much time with it. I just would never have the time to go through it. But the photos are amazing. When I first got this book, there were pictures I had never seen before. I'll show you a few of the color ones that are in there. John. There's Pete and Paul. And I'll show you one last page here with some color pictures. I think that's done with Gene Vincent, I believe. But folks, this book is fabulous about the early period, that raw rockin' period, and the period I love most by the Beatles. So anyway, check that out. Gareth Pawlowski, How They Became the Beatles. I think you could still get a copy of it. Search eBay, search wherever, Amazon, get it. Great book. All right, but getting back on track here. When I was young teenager, back in 1977, this fabulous book by Nicholas Schaffner came out, and God bless Nicholas, may he rest in peace. He's not with us anymore, but what a great Beatles fan he was, what a great writer he was, and he wrote one of the most definitive and greatest Beatles books ever. And for me as a young teenager, when I got this was before the age of the internet and online stuff and all that good stuff. This was like my Bible. This was like, The Beatles Forever by Nicholas Schaffner. You had to have it. I have 2 copies of this. This is my original paperback from 1977, and I also have a hardcover copy, which I keep pristine and all wrapped in plastic and everything. I love it so much. But anyway, when I used to read this book, he went over the early period of the Beatles. He talked about that early raw period, and just such a great writer. Oh my goodness. But he showed different pictures of different album covers and stuff from the period, from the Tony Sheridan sessions and all that good stuff. And one album cover always intrigued me in this book, and it was this one in the upper left corner here. It was only in black and white, but it's called The Savage Young Beatles, with that great picture taken of them with Pete in their leather gear. And I just was always intrigued by that. Recorded by the Beatles, Hamburg, 1961. And it was a USA released album, from what I understand, by the Savage label, hence the Savage Young Beatles, but released around 1964. So it was after the Beatles really took off. Obviously, everybody was trying to cash in and whatnot. But I remember as a young teenager reading this book, and for some reason that cover, that image of them in the leather gear with Pete, the savage young Beatles, just, rockin' Beatles, you know. It just intrigued this young teenage mind back then. Like, wow, the Beatles were savages. They were rocking. They were, you know, this is before the days of punk, folks, you know, before the Ramones and all that good stuff. So they were my Ramones, you know. Anyway, I always wondered how to get that album, and then years went by, decades went by, I never pursued it. And then I remember finding an image online once several years ago, and I loved that cover so much that I made a CD of all their early stuff. After the anthology came out and you could have the stuff from, you know, way back, I made a little CD myself. This is my little homemade CD. I took the image of that cover, the Savage Young Beatles, and I made a little CD with like 35 tracks, if you can check it out. But some of the stuff I had on it, and oh man, I used to play this thing all the time, especially in the car. Their first recordings, 1958, That'll Be the Day, In Spite of All the Danger. I had the home tape recordings from 59 and 60, studio recordings with Tony Sheridan. The Decca Audition is on here. The Cavern Club Rehearsal is on here. The EMI Audition from 62, June. And I have some live in Germany stuff as bonus tracks. So I was so infatuated with this cover and this album, The Savage Young Beatles. I made my own Savage Young Beatles CD. And I still, to this day, love, this is like one of my go-to CDs for that period of theirs. Well, finally, after many decades go by and years and forgetting all about that little black and white image in Nicholas Schaffner's Beatles Forever book, I'm in my record store not too long ago. And lo and behold, folks, guess what they had? This mind, this old man, this old graybeard's mind went back to the mid-70s when I really wanted this album, was so intrigued by it. I was a teenager again, folks, so excited. My eyes lit up. I started sweating. I started trembling. There it is, the Savage Young Beatles, live and in person. Woohoo! Anyway, I know I'm being silly, but I was so excited about it. And the kicker was, folks, it's still in the shrink wrap. I don't know if you can see that. It is still in the shrink. Here's the back cover. Pre-Ringo. With Peter Best. Okay. Finally got myself a copy of this. Oh, I'm so excited, folks. Take it out. I won't take it out of the sleeve. It's just black vinyl, but Savage, on the Savage label. Can you see that? Savage Young Beatles. I'm just so intrigued by this, folks. I'm so happy. Here we are in 2019. It's almost 2020. I'm just so happy I got this. I finally got one, folks. And for me, it was only a few bucks. And I know the material on here stinks. It's well, that doesn't stink. I mean, it's not, you know, like really long. You get you only get 8 tracks. You get Cry for a Shadow, Let's Dance, If You Love Me Baby, What I Say, Sweet Georgia Brown, Ruby Baby, Ya Ya, and Why. That's all you get. But for me, for this young man, now young in spirit, young in heart, who wanted this album when he saw the Nicholas Schaffner book all those years ago in the mid-70s, finally, I have it. That's it, folks. Just want to share a little story with you about getting a little Beatles artifact that's always been something in the back of my mind, and I'm happy I got it. Take care, everybody. God bless. Love you all. Please comment. I always do my best to try to get back to you when I can, and take care. I'll be talking to you soon. I have a Christmas video coming up very soon. Bye-bye.